She was supposed to be at a wedding. His wedding. Not saving his life on the floor of a burning warehouse with her bare hands and a prayer. But there she was, Amara Mensah, a Ghanaian ICU nurse from Accra living in Atlanta, kneeling in a puddle of blood that wasn't hers, pressing her palms against the chest of a man she'd never met, keeping his heart beating while the world around them fell apart. She didn't know his name yet. She didn't know that across the city, in a grand ballroom full of white flowers and expensive champagne, a woman in a wedding dress was raising a toast, celebrating the death of the man bleeding out beneath Amara's hands. She didn't know that the beautiful bride had arranged everything. The fire. The ambush. The bullet. She didn't know that the man she was saving, the man whose dark eyes flickered open and looked at her like she was the only real thing in the universe, was Jeon Siwon, the most feared Korean Mafia boss in the entire American South. And she definitely didn't know that within 6 hours of walking away from that warehouse, 3 black SUVs would pull up outside her apartment building, looking for her. Because of him. Before we begin, my mum said this video cannot reach 10,000 views and 1,000 subscribers. Let's prove her wrong. Smash that like button, subscribe right now, and drop in the comments where you are watching from. Now let's get into this story. Amara Mensah had one rule about shortcuts. Never take them. She'd learned this lesson in Accra, watching her grandmother navigate the crowded markets of Makola with the precision of a general. Always the long way, always the safe path, always the road where the lighting was good and people could see your face. But tonight, Amara was 45 minutes late for her friend Destiny's birthday dinner, her scrubs were still damp from a 12-hour ICU shift, and Google Maps was telling her that Fulton Industrial Boulevard would save her exactly 7 minutes. 7 whole minutes. So she took the shortcut. She smelled the smoke first, thick and chemical, the kind that burned the back of your throat. Then she saw the orange glow flickering against the dark Georgia sky 2 blocks ahead, and her nurse brain switched on before her self-preservation instincts could argue. Someone could be hurt. She pulled over. She should not have pulled over. She pulled over anyway. The warehouse was a gutted concrete shell at the end of a gravel road, and even from 50 feet away, Amara could see that whatever had happened here was not an accident. The front doors had been blown inward. Glass and metal were scattered across the lot like confetti at the world's most dangerous party. Okay, she said to herself, in the brisk, no-nonsense tone she used when talking patients off ledges. You're going to look from the road. Just look. And if you see a person, you call 911 and you do not go in there. She saw a person. He was lying just inside the blown-out entrance, half hidden by a collapsed metal shelf, one arm stretched toward the door like he'd been trying to crawl out. Even from this distance, she could see the dark stain spreading across his white dress shirt, and the white dress shirt alone told her he was not a warehouse worker. Nobody wore a shirt like that to move boxes. Lord forgive me, Amara muttered, and she went in. The man was Korean, somewhere in his mid-30s, with sharp cheekbones and a jaw that even now, in this state, could have been carved by someone who'd been commissioned to create the concept of handsome. His black hair was disheveled across his forehead. There was a cut above his left eyebrow. And the wound in his side, just below his ribs on the right, was bad. Not fatal yet. But yet was doing a lot of work in that sentence. She knelt beside him, pressed 2 fingers to his neck. Pulse. Fast and thin, like a thread being stretched too far, but there. Okay. Okay, you're alive. Stay alive. She yanked off her cardigan, balled it up, and pressed it against the wound with both hands. The pressure made him groan. A low, broken sound that meant he was conscious enough to feel pain, which was the good news. The bad news was that his eyes, when they opened, were the kind of dark that made her feel like she was looking into something with no bottom. He looked at her like she was a hallucination. Am I dead? He asked. His English was perfect, accented in a way that rolled through her chest like warm water. Not even close, Amara said. But you will be if you don't stop trying to sit up. Lay down. He blinked. You're telling me what to do. I'm a nurse. It's literally my job. No one tells me what to do. Sir. She pressed harder on the wound. He hissed in pain. I have my hands inside your ribcage, metaphorically speaking. This is not the moment to exercise your authority. Something shifted in his expression. Through the pain, through the blood loss, through whatever chaos had just tried to kill him, the corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile. But close. "You're funny," he said, like it surprised him. "I've been told." She pulled out her phone and dialed 911 with her thumb while keeping pressure on the wound. "I'm also the only thing standing between you and a very inconvenient death, so maybe tell me your name so I know what to put on the prayer." He was quiet for just a moment too long. "Siwon," he said finally. "Amara," she replied. "Don't die, Siwon. I have dinner plans." The ambulance was 8 minutes away. She kept him talking. She kept him breathing. And even in the chaos, even with the smoke thickening and her arms aching and sirens wailing in the far distance, she noticed that he never once looked away from her face. Not once. Like she was the only solid thing in a world that had just tried to swallow him whole. When the paramedics finally burst through the warehouse doors and she stepped back to let them work, she heard him say something. Quietly. Just before they put the oxygen mask over his face. She was almost certain, that he said, "Don't go." But that was crazy. He didn't know her. She didn't know him. So Amara Mensah gathered her ruined cardigan, walked back to her car with blood on her hands, and drove to Destiny's birthday dinner 47 minutes late, ordered the jollof rice because some things were non-negotiable, and told herself that was the end of it. She was wrong. The next morning started perfectly normal. Amara made her Ghanaian tea, strong, sweet, the way her mother taught her, stood by her apartment window in her oversized university sweatshirt, and watched Atlanta wake up below her. She had a blessed 24 hours off. She had a full refrigerator. She had an entire season of a reality dating show she'd been saving for exactly this occasion. Life, for this one morning, was good. Then her intercom buzzed. She frowned. It was 8:14 in the morning. Nobody she liked showed up before 9 without a warning text and a bribe. She pressed the button. "Who is it?" "Miss Mensah." The voice was deep and professional, the kind of measured baritone that sounded like it had been specifically trained to be unthreatening while being very, very threatening. "We've been sent by Mr. John. He'd like to express his gratitude for last night." Amara's tea mug stopped halfway to her lips. She set it down carefully. Then she picked it back up because she needed something to hold for the conversation she was apparently about to have. "He'd like to express his gratitude," she repeated flatly. "Yes, ma'am." "At 8 o'clock in the morning." 8:14, ma'am." "How did you get my address?" A pause that was exactly one beat too comfortable. "Mr. John has resources." Amara stared at her intercom for a long moment. She thought about the blood. She thought about the blown-out warehouse doors. She thought about the way the man on the floor had looked at her like she'd descended from somewhere above the smoke. She thought about Mr. John has resources and what that meant when it was said by someone who sounded like that at this hour at her door. "Tell Mr. John," she said, very clearly, "that I don't accept gratitude before 9. And also that finding out a woman's home address before she's given it to you is, at minimum, a yellow flag. Maybe orange." Another pause. Longer this time. "I'll pass that along, ma'am." "Great. Goodbye." She stepped away from the intercom, pressed her back against the wall, and breathed. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. She answered. "Miss Mensah." That voice. Lower than the man at the door. Rougher, like it had been dragged across gravel. Still accented. Still doing things to the inside of her chest that she was not going to acknowledge before breakfast. "I'm told I've earned a yellow flag." Amara closed her eyes. "Possibly orange," she corrected. A sound that was low and warm. A laugh. Barely there, like he wasn't used to making it. "You remembered me." "I remember all my patients who nearly bleed out on warehouse floors. It's a short list." "I want to see you." "You want to," she stopped. Regrouped. "Mr. John. I'm a nurse. You were injured. I helped because that's what I do. That's the entire story." "That's not the entire story." "It is. You stayed." His voice dropped slightly. "You didn't have to stay. You could have called an ambulance from the road and left. But you came in and you stayed and you talked to me for 8 minutes. I counted. Amara's heart did something inconvenient. I was keeping you conscious, she said. It's a medical technique. You told me your dinner was getting cold and you were still there. I was being personable. Miss Mensah. And the way he said it, like her name was something worth saying carefully, made her grip her phone tighter. Let me take you to breakfast. Just breakfast. I'm aware I'm starting from orange flag territory and I intend to work my way back. She should have said no. She said, you have 30 seconds to get to yellow. The restaurant is called Baobab Kitchen. They serve Ghanaian Korean fusion. I looked up what you might like. Silence. You researched me, she said. I prefer prepared. She hated that it was working. She hated how much she didn't hate it. That's bordering on yellow. I also had someone pick up a new cardigan for you. Same color as the one you ruined on my behalf. It's with the men downstairs. Amara walked back to her window and looked down at the street. 3 black SUVs. 3 men in suits, standing with the posture of people who had never, in their lives, been in danger of losing a fight. And one of them was holding what appeared to be a neatly wrapped package. A cardigan. The same dusty rose as hers. She pressed her lips together. That, she said, is yellow. Breakfast? He asked. She looked at the package. She looked at her cold tea. She looked at the reality dating show she wasn't going to watch anymore because apparently her own life had just decided to get dramatically interesting. 1 hour, she said. And I'm driving myself. Of course. And if anything about this feels wrong, I will leave. I would expect nothing less from a woman who argued with me while I was bleeding. She almost smiled. She did not let him hear it. 1 hour, Mr. Jeon Siwon, he said quietly. Call me Siwon. She hung up. She stood in the middle of her apartment for exactly 10 seconds. Then she went to get dressed, because if a Korean Mafia boss was going to pursue her over Ghanaian Korean fusion, she was at least going to look devastating while deciding whether or not to let him. Her grandmother always said, the long road is safe, Amara. But sometimes, just sometimes, the shortcut led somewhere your whole life had been pointing you toward. She was starting to wonder. The restaurant was not what she expected. Amara had braced herself for something cold and ostentatious. The kind of establishment that had no prices on the menu because the prices were an insult to people who could actually afford the food. She'd worn her green wrap dress, her gold hoops, and her most impressive, I am unbothered energy, prepared to be unimpressed on principle. But Baobab Kitchen was warm. The walls were terracotta orange, hung with Kent patterns that somehow didn't clash with the delicate Korean ink brushwork framed beside them. The music was Afrobeats softened to a simmer. The smell was extraordinary. Groundnut soup and sesame and ginger in a combination that made her stomach make an embarrassing sound. It's new, Siwon said from beside her, and she startled because she hadn't heard him approach. He moved like water, no sound, no warning. 2 Ghanaian sisters and a Korean chef. They opened 6 months ago. I'm one of their investors. She turned to look at him fully for the first time in daylight. Last night he'd been a bleeding man on a warehouse floor. This morning she needed a word stronger than unfair. He was in dark slacks and a simple black shirt open at the collar, one hand casually in his pocket, hair combed back except for one piece that had escaped onto his forehead. The cut above his eyebrow had a small bandage on it. He moved with the slight careful tension of someone managing a healing wound, but he'd never admit it. How are you upright? She asked, because she was a nurse and ignoring it was medically irresponsible. Stubbornness, he said. That tracks. She tilted her head. The wound needed stitches. Did you get stitches? I had a doctor. A real doctor, or a Mafia doctor? The pause was its own answer. Siwon. She said his name for the first time, and watched something in his expression shift, just barely, like the surface of water touched by wind. I need you to have gotten proper stitches. 14, he said. Proper, hospital grade. My doctor was very thorough and very annoyed about being called at midnight. Good. She nodded once, satisfied. Now I'll have breakfast with you. Something in his eyes warmed. It was quiet and devastating, and she absolutely filed it away in the "we are not thinking about this" cabinet. They were seated at a corner table. Of course, the corner where he could see every door, which she catalogued as Mafia habit number 1, and the owner herself came out to greet him. A warm Ghanaian woman in her 50s named Afia, who took one look at Amara and then at Siwon and grinned with the knowing energy of every Ghanaian auntie who'd ever lived. Finally, Afia said to Siwon in English, "You brought someone with sense to this table." "Auntie," Siwon said, with a patient, long-suffering tone that suggested this was a recurring dynamic. "She's beautiful. Are you going to behave?" Afia asked him. "I'm always well behaved." Afia looked at Amara. "He is never well behaved." "I already figured," Amara said warmly, and Afia laughed and went to get their food. The breakfast that arrived was extraordinary. Kelaweel, the sweet fried plantains Amara had been missing since her last visit to Accra, alongside Korean Pigeon pancakes, soft tofu stew, and the most perfect cup of Ghanaian tea she'd had outside her mother's kitchen. She ate with real, unguarded pleasure, and when she looked up, Siwon was watching her with an expression she couldn't entirely categorize. "You're staring," she said. "You're eating like you mean it," he said. "Most people who come to meetings with me eat like they're afraid. First of all, this is not a meeting. Second of all, I spent a 12-hour shift yesterday keeping people alive. I earned this kelaweel." She pointed her fork at him. "And you should eat more. You lost blood." He picked up his chopsticks and ate a piece of tofu, watching her over the bowl with an expression that was doing entirely too much. "Tell me about yourself," he said. "You already looked me up. I know where you work and where you live. That's logistics. I want to know you." She studied him. The directness of it. The way he said "you" like he meant the whole weight of the word. "Accra born, Atlanta raised," she said. "My mum's a midwife, my dad teaches secondary school literature. I became a nurse because I couldn't choose between caring about people and being right about everything, and nursing lets you do both." She paused. "Your turn." "Busan born," he said. "Atlanta-based. My father built this organization from nothing. I run it now." Diplomatically put. "I try. Do you?" She leaned forward slightly. "Because the warehouse suggests that someone tried very hard to end your diplomatic career last night. And you're sitting here eating tofu like nothing happened." The warmth didn't leave his eyes, but something behind it went still and careful. "That situation has been handled." "By handled you mean?" "Miss Mensah." "Amara." "Amara." Again, that careful thing he did with her name. "The people who did what was done to me last night are no longer a concern. What concerns me right now is whether you'll let me take you somewhere on Friday." She sat back. "You're asking me on a date." "I'm asking you on a date. You've known me for less than 24 hours. "I know." His voice was quiet, but his eyes were entirely serious. "But I've spent the last 12 hours thinking about a woman who argued with me while I was dying, and I don't intend to wonder what would have happened if I'd just sent a thank you card." Amara looked at him for a long moment. The late morning light came through the warm terracotta walls and caught the bandage above his eyebrow and the careful way he was holding himself against the pain he wouldn't mention, and she thought, this man is going to be a problem. "Friday," she said. "But I pick the activity." Something sparked in his eyes. "Agreed. And no black SUVs. 2. For safety. 1. 2. Amara. Non-negotiable." She considered this. "Fine. 2. But they stay outside. Always." She finished her kelaweel. He watched her the entire time, and she pretended not to notice, and Afia winked at her on the way out, and the whole morning felt like the beginning of something that had no interest in being small. In the black SUV back to her apartment, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Thank you for Friday. S." She stared at it. Then she typed back, "You don't have my number." His response was immediate. "I told you. Resources." And then, I also told my men to stand down until you invite them otherwise. You have full control of that. She read it 3 times. He had given her the power to decide. In a world where he apparently controlled everything, he'd handed her the dial. She saved his number under, "Warehouseman, do not catch feelings." She was already failing at the parenthetical. She took him to the Carnival. Not a gala. Not a Michelin-starred restaurant. Not the kind of date a Korean Mafia boss had clearly been taken on before, based on the look on his face when the black SUV pulled up to the Atlanta Fairgrounds and he saw the Ferris wheel and the cotton candy and the ring toss booths. "A carnival," he said. "A carnival," Amara confirmed pleasantly. He turned to look at her. "Why?" "Because I wanted to see what you look like when you don't know what to do." A beat. Then end. Jury's still out. She was already out of the car, adjusting the sleeves of her yellow sundress, gold earrings catching the early evening light. "Come on, Siwon. The funnel cake is not going to eat itself." He caught up to her in 3 strides, and she always noticed it was a problem, that even in dark jeans and a casual linen shirt with the sleeves rolled to the elbows, he looked like the kind of man who altered the gravitational pull of a room simply by existing. People clocked him. Some looked twice. He didn't notice or didn't care. He noticed her. That was the thing. In a fairground full of colors and noise and distraction, his attention didn't wander. It stayed on her face like she was the most interesting thing in a 5-mile radius. "Stop looking at me like that," she said without turning her head. "I'm not looking at you like anything. You're looking at me like I'm the funnel cake." The sound he made, warm and low and surprised, was catastrophically attractive. "I have more self-control than that." "Do you?" She stopped at the ring toss booth and handed the vendor a $5 bill. "Prove it. Win me something." He looked at the booth. He looked at the rings. He looked at her with an expression that clearly said, "This is beneath me," and then he picked up a ring and tossed it with the kind of casual precision that suggested he did not miss things he aimed at. First ring, landed. Second ring, landed. Third ring, landed clean on the tallest peg. The booth vendor stared. Amara clapped slowly. "Show off. You asked me to win something. I asked you to prove self-control. That was just showing off. The result is the same." She chose the biggest stuffed lion on the rack, golden mane, absurd proportions, the size of a small child. She named him immediately. "His name is Kwame." "You're naming the lion." "Kwame Mensah John," she said, straight-faced. "He has dual citizenship." Siwon stared at her. Then he did the thing, the almost smile, the one that had started in a warehouse and was slowly becoming the most dangerous element of his entire presence. "You're going to be exhausting," he said. But the way he said it was not a complaint. It was something closer to wonder. They walked. They ate funnel cake that got powdered sugar on Siwon's very expensive shirt, and he didn't flinch, just looked down at it and then at her laughing expression and dusted it off with the kind of unconcerned dignity that made her laugh harder. They played the duck game where you picked a rubber duck from a pool and won a prize by its number, and Amara got a tiny plastic ring that she immediately put on her pinky finger with great ceremony. "I'm engaged," she announced. "To this carnival." "You could do worse," he said. "I absolutely could." She looked sideways at him. "Have you ever done something like this before? A date like this?" "No." No hesitation. "What kind of dates have you been on?" "Restaurants. Events. Things that required planning and a security briefing." "That sounds terrible." It was. He said it simply, like it was just a fact he'd accepted. Then, "This is better." She believed him. That was the dangerous part. On the Ferris wheel, she'd insisted, he'd agreed with the resignation of a man who'd decided she was worth any indignity. They rose above the fairground lights as Atlanta spread out beneath them, the city glittering and breathing in the summer dark. Kwame the lion sat between them on the seat, a frankly absurd chaperone. "Tell me something true," Amara said, looking at the skyline. He was quiet for a moment. "I was supposed to attend a board meeting the night you found me. Someone changed the location. Sent me to the warehouse." A pause. "Someone on the inside." She turned to look at him. Someone you trusted. Someone I trusted completely. His jaw was tight, but his voice was level, the voice of a man who'd learned to keep the earthquakes on the inside. I'm still determining who. Are you afraid? He looked at her then, and the carnival lights made strange shadows across his sharp face. I don't frighten easily. That's not what I asked. He was quiet for longer this time. No, he said, finally. I'm not afraid. Another pause. But I was in that warehouse. For the first time in a very long time. His dark eyes held hers. And then you started arguing with me about dinner and I forgot to be. Her chest did the inconvenient thing. Siwon, she said. Amara. I'm not a woman you can protect by keeping at a distance, she said quietly. If you're in danger and I'm near you, I need to know what's real. He studied her face in the Ferris wheels swaying dark. You're not pulling away. I'm a trauma nurse. I've seen real danger. I'm not going to pretend I don't see it here. She held his gaze. But I'm also not going to pretend I don't see you. The Ferris wheel was at its highest point, and Atlanta was below them, and Siwon reached across the ridiculous stuffed lion named Kwame Mensah and took her hand. Not urgently. Not desperately. Just held it. Like she was something steady. Like she was the long road home. I see you too, he said. I haven't stopped seeing you since that warehouse floor. She looked at their hands. Hers brown and capable and still carrying the memory of his heartbeat under her palms. His large and warm and careful in a way that didn't match his reputation. This is accelerating very fast, she said. I know. I should probably be more cautious. Probably. I'm choosing not to be. He squeezed her hand. Just once. Good. Below them, the carnival glittered. The lion named Kwame bore witness. And Amara Mensah, who had taken a shortcut on the wrong night and ended up exactly where she was supposed to be, decided, quietly, irrevocably, that she was done pretending this was going to stay small. Some things were just too big from the beginning. 3 weeks was too fast. 3 weeks was not fast enough. 3 weeks of breakfast at Baobab Kitchen, of Siwon learning her tea order before she arrived, of her teaching him to pronounce Kelaweel correctly, which he achieved after 6 tries with the kind of focused determination he probably applied to things that ended careers. 3 weeks of him calling every evening, not urgently, not needily, just calling. Talking. Being the last voice she heard before she slept. Vivid, white flowers and gold fabric and Siwon at the end of an aisle looking at her like she'd invented the concept of arrival, and she lay there for a moment just breathing it in. Then her phone rang. Are you awake? His voice in the morning was different from his voice at night. Rougher. More honest, somehow. You called to ask if I'm awake, she said. I called because I'm outside your building with breakfast. She sat up. Siwon. I know. I should have texted. You should have texted. I have Kelaweel from Mafia. She was at the intercom in 11 seconds. She counted. She wasn't proud. He arrived at her door with the takeaway containers and Mafia's trademark brown paper bags, and he was wearing a gray sweater. A gray sweater, not a designer suit, just a regular sweater like a human being, and his hair was slightly unstyled and there was the faintest shadow of stubble on his jaw, and she was not going to survive him. She was genuinely not going to survive him. Come in, she said. Like it was easy. Like her heart wasn't doing a full choreography routine. They ate at her small kitchen table, with Kwame the lion watching from the couch and her good mugs out and the morning light doing everything it could to make this moment look like what it was, which was the beginning of something domestic and inevitable and terrifying. I've been thinking, he said. About what comes next. He looked at her steadily. About whether you'd be willing to come to Busan with me. Next month. I need to settle some things with my family, and he paused. I'd like you with me. If you're willing. Busan, she repeated. I know it's fast. Siwon. We've been. I know. My mum hasn't even met you. I know. My mum will ask you approximately 90 questions before she lets you sit down. I'm prepared for 90 questions. She looked at him across the kitchen table, with his grey sweater and his unstyled hair and the bandage above his eyebrow finally gone, leaving just the faint line of a scar. She thought about the warehouse. The Ferris wheel. The way he'd said, "I want to be chosen," with the honesty of a man who'd never let himself say it before. "I'll come to Busan," she said. He let out a breath. Just quietly. Like he'd been holding it. "But," she added, "I'm meeting your people as exactly who I am. A Ghanaian nurse from Atlanta who argues with people professionally. No softening, no editing. I wouldn't change a single word of you," he said. And he said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. Lord, she thought. I am in so much trouble. She picked up her mug. He picked up his. Outside, Atlanta was already awake and moving. Inside, everything was warm and quiet and real. Then his phone rang. The number on screen made him go still. Not tense, not exactly. But the easy morning quiet shifted slightly, like a room where someone had opened a door to the cold. "Who is it?" she asked. He looked at her. His expression was unreadable in a specific, careful way she'd learned to notice. "It's a number I didn't expect to hear from again," he said. "The wedding?" she asked quietly. "Her husband." He said it evenly. "He's calling from a private line that only my father's people should have." Amara set down her mug. The morning light was still warm. The Keller wheel was still fragrant. But something had shifted, not broken, not ruined, just altered, the way weather changes in the instant before you understand what kind of storm is coming. "Answer it," she said. He looked at her. "Answer it, Siwon. I'm right here." He picked up. And she watched his face as he listened. She watched the stillness. The controlled jaw. The careful eyes that stayed on her like she was the thing keeping him grounded. Then his expression changed. Just once. Just slightly. But she had been learning his face for weeks, and she knew, that whatever he'd just heard was not handled. Was not settled. Was not over. He lowered the phone. "What?" she said. "The warehouse," he said quietly. "The night you found me." A beat. "I was carrying something with me. Documents. Evidence." His jaw was tight. "They didn't find it on me because I'd already moved it. But they know it exists." "What kind of evidence?" "The kind that ends people." He looked at her, and for the first time since the carnival, she saw something in his eyes that was close to afraid. Not for himself. "Siwon," she said carefully. "What are they asking for?" "They want a trade." His voice was very still. "The documents. For something of mine they claim to have." "What do they have?" He looked at her for a long moment. And then he said the thing that made her whole body go cold. "They're saying they have records. Medical records." His eyes were dark and certain and sorry. "Yours, Amara. From the hospital. They know exactly when your shift ends. They know your routes. They know your patterns." A pause that felt like falling. "They've been watching you since the warehouse." The kitchen was very quiet. "So what happens now?" she asked. Her voice was steady. She was a trauma nurse. She was always steady. "Now," he said, and something in his face hardened into something she had not yet seen. Not the warm man who won carnival prizes or squeezed her hand on a Ferris wheel, but the other man, the one who ran an empire and kept the earthquakes on the inside. "I make sure they never come within a mile of you." "And the documents?" "Non-negotiable." "Siwon." "Amara." He stood up. The grey sweater and the unstyled morning and the Keller wheel were still there, but he was also this. Both things at once, always both things. "I need you to trust me." She looked at him. She thought about shortcuts and warehouse floors and names exchanged in firelight and small gold carnival rings still sitting in the dish on her windowsill. "I trust you," she said. "I need you to pack a bag," he said quietly. "Not forever. Just for now. You can't stay here tonight." "Where am I going?" He held her gaze. "With me," he said. "If you'll come." And the morning that had started so perfectly warm and domestic had transformed, in the span of one phone call, into the beginning of something she couldn't entirely see the shape of yet. something larger and more dangerous and more achingly real than anything she'd bargained for on the night she took a shortcut through Fulton Industrial Boulevard. She stood up. She went to pack her bag. Because she was Amara Mensah, born in Accra, raised in Atlanta, capable of keeping hearts beating with her bare hands. And she had never, not once in her life, walked away from something worth fighting for. And this man, with his grey sweater and his scar and his Carnival prize lion still sitting on her couch, was the most worth fighting for thing she'd ever found. She was going to need a bigger bag. To be continued in part 2. If you made it to the end, drop a fire in the comments and let me know where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss part 2, because I promise you, what Siwon does next, and what Amara finds out about the woman who tried to have him killed, will make your jaw drop. Part 2 is coming, and it is not safe. Hit that notification bell. I'll see you there. Yellow heart, black heart.